And today we are going to be talking about overcoming the fear of being seen and heard. Now, this is perfect for any emerging entrepreneurs, aspiring authors, and even those who have been published before and are really wanting to learn, know, and understand a little bit about how to cope with feeling like you aren't expert enough to share your knowledge, your wisdom, and your truth, both in the creation and pricing of your offers, and also when you step into your power as a leader. So, I am Tracy Brown. I am the CEO of Gemini Moon Press and the co-founder of the Women Writing Intentionally Collective. And today I am joined by the beautiful Amanda Noor.
Hi, I'm Amanda Noor. You can find me on my socials under Amanda B. Noor. So just to not get confused, it helps me remember who I am. I'm a intuitive coach that uses working with the moon and reading cards just to help others tap into their own intuition and their own guidance to live the life that they want to live.
Beautiful. So Amanda and I have been on our authorial journeys together for a little while now. We both released a book called Lunar Wisdom back in October last year, all about reconnecting with the divine feminine through rituals, spells, magic, and the phases of the moon. And then last week, in fact, 1 week ago today, we had the release of Betrayed, Stories from Women Who Transformed Their Broken Hearts into Growth and Abundance. So, Amanda, I would really, really love to just ask you to share with everybody a little bit about how stepping into your power as an author has actually allowed you to overcome your fear of being seen and heard. Because I know that as part of your journey and what you've shared both in Lunar Wisdom and in Betrayed, that what you do and how you do it has been something that has triggered some of that witch wound, the fear of being seen and heard. And then we'll dive in a little bit later into how it's also activated the healer wound as well. But I really just want to ask you, like, how has stepping into that authorial journey allowed you to overcome that fear of being seen and heard?
Oh, it's it's interesting because I still have that fear, right? But I work at a local coffee shop and I'm allowed to sell my books there. And then next door, I sell them at the crystal shop. And so when you write a book, it's out there and you can't take it back. And I was like, and then leading up to that was just on that journey of just figuring out who I was and like finding my community, because sometimes you're not safe to be seen and heard in certain parts and then you are in others. So as I was learning to speak out, and especially with starting with writing Lunar Wisdom, it's helped attract other people into my life that do see me, and they see me as I am now and not the image that they have of me from 20 years ago or 10 years ago or when I was 5, right? Because sometimes people like to get stuck on how they knew you and how you are and who you are now. And so I'm able to attract people that see me for who I am now and that accept me, then that, because I think a lot of the fear is from the people that already knew me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right?
And I think that
of what other people think of me kind of thing.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's true, because quite often when we're thinking about, oh my God, what will people think? The people that we are worried about what they're going to think are usually like those friends and families, former employers, people that have known us for a really long time, who may now be seeing a different facet of our lives or our personalities or learning more about our stories. But I loved what you were just touching on then about how the community set, like being seen and heard by people who resonate with that part of you or who believe the same kinds of things that you do, and that allowing yourself to step up in that way has allowed those people to be attracted into your life. Would you say that's accurate for you?
Yeah. And then there's also, just because I do a lot of things in my real life too, and so sometimes too, and sometimes we kind of have to you show just certain facets of yourself in certain situations. I'm like, we still live in a society and there's still some kind of expectation and stuff, but I'm still allowed to be more of who I am. And part of that too is what I found interesting is it's like I'm going back to things that I felt that I wanted to know more about or that resonated with me when I was very young, but was told wasn't the path to go.
Yes. Oh, I think that's definitely something that I think as we either become women of a certain age, or as we, and I think, and the age I don't think matters so much as also stage of life, like particularly women who have had children. And when we get to that stage where we finally start to have a little bit more of our own independence back, that we have more time to remember that we had interests and hobbies before that we have put aside because we didn't have time to think about them, or there were so many other things that we were trying to do. And we do come full circle again. And we think, oh, I was really interested in that. And this time, as you said, when we were interested in it, perhaps in our younger days, it wasn't socially acceptable, or it was less mainstream, or I know definitely in Australia, and I touched on this I think in one of my book chapters, that being spiritual, being witchy or whatever, when I was in my early 20s in Australia, in Western Australia in particular, was like not a thing. Like tarot cards and oracle cards were not mainstream yet. If you owned those, you were pretty much in the pagan community, and it was not socially acceptable. But now, like after I had my kids and everything, and I finally came back to it, now everyone's got them. Like everybody, even people who don't consider themselves to be witchy or overly woo or whatever, have cards, because it's okay now, and it's acceptable to show that part of ourselves to other people, because society has changed and evolved as well. So I think there's a lot of that as we come full circle and we reignite those interests that we are finding. Or I don't know, I would love to hear from you whether you're also finding that as you come back around to those interests, you're kind of like, oh, well, the world has changed to a certain degree, depending on what kind of community you're in, and that it's a lot easier to actually find and connect with those communities that have those same interests.
I think that's it. When I was in the throes of motherhood, mostly of teenagers, the internet, although honestly, in a lot of times as a parent, you want to just shut off the Wi-Fi, cut off all the access, right? Because it's scary and you can't control what's coming into your house. But it also showed me that there was good to it, because it helped one of my kids who locally felt alone and like not belonging. They found a place to belong online. And for me, I found, in the last couple of years, that's where I have found a lot of belonging and connection too. In a different than what I've had. So I think in that way, the world is a lot different, because it is a lot easier to find your groups. Like, I mean, there might be people within 5 miles of living by me, but I didn't know, right? Until I found them online or at the coffee shop. And then, it comes back to that. But for me, the biggest thing was because honestly, a lot of this stuff was like from when I was like 7 or 8 or 9. And it's just like, I knew then. And it's like, I knew myself and I knew who I was. And so that's where the intuition and that comes back. It's like, I knew. I was told to do something else. So then I was taught to listen to what I was being told outside of myself. And I've learned that I knew all along.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that coming back to ourselves and stepping into our power and our authority is really, it's a reconnection, right? It's coming back around to it and finding those ways to connect and find those communities. And a lot of it has been online. And like leading on from that, because you mentioned earlier that you were able to, after the release of Lunar Wisdom, you were able to sell your books, like paperback copies of your book in your coffee shop, but also in a local crystal store. And I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into that for those who are tuning in and talk about how actually taking that step to overcome that fear of being seen and heard, but then also leveraging your book has allowed you to start building your business in the real, in the offline world, in the real world, as well as in the online world, and really start building that in a different kind of way. So I'd love for you to just explain to everybody a little bit about where you were at in your business before you wrote Lunar Wisdom, and how writing as a part of Lunar Wisdom, and then obviously what you will take from what you did in Lunar Wisdom and reapply that as part of Betrayed in your journey as well, but how it has helped you to build your business and allow you to step up in your local community as well to be seen.
So that's really interesting. So for like the last, I don't know, 6 or so years, I was involved with the group. I've always been into like a lot of personal development and stuff. And then I've like dabbled in and out with like energy medicine and more holistic methods with essential oils or crystals and herbs like herbal teas and things like that. And doing this personal development stuff, right? And then the life coaching, and you're just like, oh, like I just knew, like I've always just like known I've had this thing and I haven't known what. And then I was like, and then when I started like using cards and just the prompts, the words, the pictures, and just how that just helps me get grounded and gives me a direction to go off of and let my mind, it just, you kind of just like that internal riff. And then you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That kind of thing. And so I was like, but then I'm stuck. Where do I start? What do I build off of? Like, and we're lucky I can log into Facebook and that computer safe passwords, because I will reset my password. And within 5 hours, me passwords. I can remember all the phone numbers of all my friends from when I was 7, and nobody has those numbers anymore because we all have cell phones, but I can't remember my passwords. So I literally just was like nothing. And how we met too was from doing the certified moonology course. And so we met on Facebook.
Yeah, we sure did.
And you reached out to me because you're like, hey, I'm doing this book. And just my first thing was, it was like a heck yeah. And then it was like a, oh no. And so like I had nothing, and I was like, I don't have an email list. Like I don't know anything. And it was just having the different authors, and it was like, hey, here's how to do a Linktree. And in Linktree, you can connect a payment to do this. And you can gather names for, because initially I was just like through Facebook Messenger and Instagram, just like people just I would just send me a message and let me know you want to know more about when the book comes out. And then I learned how to actually have people go and put in their info, and then it just gets sent to me so I can create a list. I'm still not automated. I still have to get the email and put it in the list myself manually. And when I do my emails, I still have to like copy and paste, but it's a lot quicker than what it was. And then it's like, oh, I can put offers on here, and oh, I can have this. Like, I think I did have Venmo before the book, but it was I very rarely used it. Now it's just like, here's my QR code, buy my book. And I think too, one of the things that when I was doing all the personal development stuff and that, you don't like to feel salesy. And you know, whenever you tell me to introduce myself, I'm like, we know how much I like that. And I don't, because it's like, it feels weird. And you're like, you know, like, oh, hey, like, I'm the bee's knees. Y'all need to come check me out. And it's not that. And you don't like to feel icky. And so it's not, the nice thing about the book is, for one, it's not even like, hey, I did a book. It's like, you should read everything else that everybody else wrote. My stuff's okay too. You know, like, I'm proud of it. But there's more than just me, and it's a lot easier to promote for me because I'm promoting a whole group of women that I've just learned to love and adore, and their stories. And I still go back and reread because it's not, you know, it's kind of weird to read your own stuff, you know, it'd be kind of like, but at the same time, when I go back and read what I wrote, it touches me in a way that I have to remind myself that I wrote that. And then it's like, oh, because I probably need that.
It is funny how sometimes our stories come back to us and we're like, I don't even remember writing that, or wow, that was some good stuff. I didn't remember writing that, but that was good. But it does, like, or sometimes we write the things and when we come back to them later, we're like, oh, I was writing that for my future self. Like, because I didn't know that I was really going to need to hear that again.
I'm emotional, and I like to read things that make me cry, and like certain fiction books, you know, like when Sirius Black died in Harry Potter, I was bawling so bad I couldn't read, like, you know. And when I've gone back and even like doing the edits, like I'll be reading what I wrote and like all of a sudden I'll be like, oh, and like the feels. And then I'm like, wow. And then I had somebody else like comment once and they're like, you made me cry in all the right places. And I was just like, whoa, you know, like that meant a lot to me because I sure made myself cry a lot.
Yeah. Oh, I love that when we get that feedback where it tells us that what our intentions were for the book or for our stories actually hit people exactly the way that we had hoped. Just, it does. It makes you want to cry. It makes your heart want to burst. Like, I feel that way every time, like particularly when Lunar Wisdom came out, because I had such a clear vision for Lunar Wisdom and what it was I wanted to create with that book and what I wanted all of the contributing authors to be able to bring to that. And the way that when people see that and see themselves in each person's story, and that's the same in Betrayed as well, when people read each woman's story and actually see that little piece of themselves just in a snippet or like a facet of somebody's story. It doesn't have to be the exact situation, but we see these parts of ourselves in other people's stories and they resonate and they hit different parts of us. And when they share that with us, it literally makes me want to cry because I'm just like, yes, oh my God, that's exactly what I wanted. Like that was exactly the vision that I had. And it's so powerful to get that feedback for a start, but then also to know that the intentions that we set, the things that we wanted to achieve with our stories and with our books actually is what's happening and going out into the world. And I think that is one of the most powerful parts of overcoming the fear of being seen and heard and sharing our stories. Like you said earlier, when it's written, it's out there in the world for anybody to find. It's permanent. It's not just like a social post. It's disappeared. Like, I mean, it might be on your feed, but people have to scroll to find it. Yeah. It's there and it's permanent, and people can
find it. And you can delete it and make it even harder for people to find, you know?
Yeah, but, you know, books are forever. And it's the magic of the written word in a different kind of way. It's the legacy that we leave. It's the light that we shine in a way that somebody else out there needs to hear that story. and needs to find that piece of wisdom that we've written. And, in both of your stories, like in Lunar Wisdom, you shared some beautiful guidance about how you work with the moon, but then they're in the ritual and spell book section, which was something that we did, especially with Lunar Wisdom. You shared about like how to make spell jars, and that also I wanted to touch on in terms of your business. It's helped you then translate that again into workshops that you're now doing out in your community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I talked about, I like doing in the little jars with the crystals and the herbs and setting my intentions, but with the crystal shop, she had got these wood grids, and I even in the book talked about how you could translate it to laying out the crystals, to tap into that energy, and with the crystal grids. And I'm like, I'm by no means an expert, right? But at the same time, I have my knowledge that I've tied into other people's knowledge. And then we did a new moon, full moon workshop series. And so we did the working with the moon, and then how to pick stones appropriately for the moon, or the sign that the moon's in, or just your own intention. Cause it was like, it has to be this way, and I've always been that way my entire life when it comes to like recipes or patterns or things like that. I'm like, I always look at something and I go, yeah, I kind of want to do that. And then I just do what I want. And I always say, it's either because I'm really creative or I really just don't like rules, or maybe both.
Maybe both.
Maybe both.
I do the same kind of things. I'm like, oh, I could reverse engineer that. And then I'm like, oh, but I don't have this, or I don't have this. I'm like, that's okay. I'm just going to do this instead.
Yeah. Like the first time I made my favorite cheesecake for a family dinner, I had a recipe book and I just looked at 5 different recipes because I didn't really like any other one of them. And I was like, and then just did my own thing. And my husband always says that. He's like, whenever you just invent something because you don't know what to do, he says, it's always better than any, so, mostly that's for dinner. And I mean, we like to eat, but with other things, I did that when my daughter was little. I did that with an Easter dress. I learned some basic crochet skills, and then I just made it up as I went and made my daughter a dress, and it was really cute.
I think the moral of the story here is that when we listen to our intuition about how, and our internal guidance, it never steers us wrong. That's what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah. And it's been a hard lesson. Honestly, it's been a very long, decades long lesson. And so that's the one thing about with writing the book and being able to build my platform is I'm not out there to tell people what to do, but I've learned a long, hard road of trusting myself and then helping other people to trust themselves.
Yeah. I love that. So I think probably the salient takeaways from this is that in terms of overcoming the fear of being seen and heard, it's learning to listen to that internal guidance, which can sometimes be a really long, hard road because we often don't listen to those things, or we allow those societal expectations to come in and say, actually, no, that, like that's not right. You shouldn't do that. It should be done this way. But when we do listen to that internal guidance and those systems saying, actually, you need to do things like this, or maybe if you make something like this, whether it's cooking, whether it's, crocheting dresses, whether it's even in your business and running your business how you want, like you were talking about with your life coaching, and then the intuitive drawing the cards and using your intuition as part of your guidance in your coaching business. And also then translating your work with herbs and crystals and things from spell jars into crystal grids and whatnot, that allowing yourself to really lean into that intuitive guidance and following that doesn't necessarily make that fear of being seen and heard go away, but it actually gives us the confidence to lean into doing what we know is in alignment, even though we may still have that little nagging fear in the back, what will people think? But I guess, do you feel like it's the loudness of the voices change? So rather than the loudness of the voice saying, "Ooh, you shouldn't be doing this," becomes less loud than the you need to listen to yourself and you need to just speak your truth.
I think it does. And then sometimes, when you get that off balance again, for me, I get to go back to myself and like, am I coming from my integrity? Because that's like really important to me. And so at that point, if I know I'm coming from that place where I know and I'm showing up with my integrity, then yeah, what other people think is still scary, but it doesn't matter because I know that I don't want to say like I'm right, but like I'm right with myself. I'm right within, and I can stand
confidently
in that, just going like I'm this is right for me.
Yeah. And it gives you, I guess, that confidence to stand in your power in that, well, I don't have to be the expert, like you're saying. I don't have to be the expert, but I am confident that what I know and the knowledge that I'm bringing to the table can help somebody who doesn't know what I know.
Exactly.
And can help that person there. And so I guess the moral of this story really is that whether you feel like you're expert enough or not, you still have more knowledge than somebody else. You don't have to know all about technology, like we were talking about earlier, because, building a business empire, building a business can be done a bit at a time. We improve over time. It's allowing ourselves the confidence to say, I know this thing, I'm willing to build onto it. It's not about just magically waving our wand and boom, 6-figure business owner.
Really?
In 90 seconds.
You have to grow. I've noticed like you have to grow into it, because it's like would I like my income to be at a certain level yesterday? Hey, yeah, that would be great, but I'm not that person, or I wasn't yesterday that person that is there. I have to learn. I have to learn how to make a link tree and set up like offers at different levels. I have to learn how to develop those things. I have to learn how to show up for myself. And with the moon, with cycles, I have to know that it's okay that I wasn't productive in this area today, because that isn't what felt like. What felt was self-care, or what felt was I needed to be there for my grandkids or help, a neighbor, and so it's following that flow, but then staying consistent and learning. And I really, really, and you've brought this up, I felt so behind. And I do a lot of times in life feel so behind in a lot of things, but it's just like, it just keeps showing up, and you just keep taking one step at a time. And when you need a nap, you take a nap.
Yeah. And I guess what that really comes back to is, to a certain degree, self-love, learning to accept and love ourselves in every stage and in every cycle that we're at, and allowing ourselves to really lean into that. So it's not just standing in our integrity and in alignment with ourselves, but it's also loving ourselves enough to say, you know what, it's okay if I don't know how to do all of those things, or if I'm not exactly where I'm at. Because when we grow into ourselves, to use your words, when we grow into ourselves, when we can learn to love and embody that about ourselves and accept that we are where we are in this moment, and that's okay. And that's where we have to build from. Yeah, we can't go back and do it yesterday. We can only start from where we are today. And I think that's actually a really powerful realization.
Yeah. And then there's the alchemy in, as you do that, what you need starts to find you. I would have never, ever thought, this is how I can build a link tree. This is how I can combine my Instagram and my Facebook, or build an email list, right? Because I follow several people that have actually lost their full accounts and they've lost their business. So, you've got to kind of have your own business plan. And I wouldn't have had any of that, but I just kept showing up a little bit as I could. And maybe, and then thinking back, like, well, I could have done better is what I would tell myself, but I did enough. And then it alchemizes. And then all the authors that started coming in with Lunar Wisdom, then it's like, Talisha's like, oh, I'm going to teach everybody how how to create your own mini website with a link tree because it's simple. And then, Ruth with her editing, and now she's edited, Betrayed, and then the rest of the Wounded Women. And it's been fascinating to me to see that. And I had several years ago where my theme of my year was just like go with the flow, because I had no idea. And I was like, I can't plan anything. It's just if I feel into something, I'm going to do it. And so I had been practicing that. And so then when stuff starts to come, then you just sit back and you're just like, oh, okay. I wouldn't have known in 2015 that Going with the Flow was going to be publishing a book in 2022, the day after my birthday.
Yes. Love it. And here we are. It's okay. 2015, Tracy didn't know she was going to be here either. And here we are.
And yet 8-year-old me always wanted to write a book.
Mm-hmm.
And,
I found journals from 21-year-old Tracy where she was tracking moon cycles. So, I mean, everything comes full circle.
Exactly.
But yeah, I love everything that we've talked about today. I love how we have talked about, those cycles coming back to ourselves and like things that we knew in our younger years that we then allowed society to, steer us away from, that we've then come back to, that integrity and that truth and that power, the way that we are allowing ourselves to step into and allowing ourselves to be seen and heard despite the fear, because the voice is getting stronger within us. And we know that standing in our truth and sharing our knowledge, wisdom, and power actually is where we're meant to be. And that by allowing yourself to step into that from an authorial point of view and share that in a book has then allowed you to step into building your business in different ways. You've got your online business, but now you run in-person events like at your crystal shop. You're sharing earlier that they've asked you to do those quarterly. That is different ways that we are able to leverage our books to build our businesses and our empires and bring in different streams of income. Because the other thing we didn't really touch on was the fact that you've then been able to sell physical copies of your book, signed copies, and ones where you've offered bonuses with oracle card readings and things like that, to also, make money for yourself as a return on that as well in your business. And so it is something that I think we, particularly also as women who work in a spiritual space, that heal a wound and that fear of charging for our services, or even having the audacity to sell our gifts, right? Like to do readings for people in exchange for money, is something that spiritual women struggle with a lot, because we are also told that if that is a talent that we have, if God has given us that gift, or, whoever you believe in, if the universe has given us those gifts, then we shouldn't charge for them, because that is, we should just be sharing those with the world. And that's something that as women has been brought into our lives through generations of being told by society that we need to nurture and we need to look after everybody, and that is just a thing that women do, and it's not a thing that women charge for. Whereas, in days gone by, the healers and medicine women and midwives wouldn't have charged for their services, but we would never go to a doctor and say, you shouldn't be charging for your services. Like, that's not okay. And so there is that, I think we are now coming to a point where we're realizing, or we're standing up against those beliefs where people are saying, oh, well, you shouldn't charge for that. And it's like, well, that's all good and well, but giving away my gifts doesn't put food on the table, doesn't pay the mortgage or the rent, doesn't allow me to look after my family. So, somebody posted the other day something about paying in courage or something like that, payment for something is courage, and they're like, okay, well, can you send me a list of hotels that accept courage as payment for a room?
Right. And that's
Well,
where
travel being courage. Travel isn't about the money. It's about, courage. And someone was like, oh, yes, like,
right,
tell me
right.
hotels that accept courage as payment.
Yes. Tell me who I can, how I can pay for my necessities with your opinions. That's the one thing. And over, is like, yeah, we talk in dollars, right? But it's energy and it's an exchange, because I've done some moon things in exchange with a friend for her services. So so depending on what there is, somebody wanted to practice like giving readings to people, and I was like, hey, I'll trade you. Like, you give me one, I'll give you one, and so energy is it's a trade thing, and we just use money. So back when there were healers and women did things, it was a trade thing, right? And things were valuable. But now when we go to work and we trade our time for dollars and our physical labor or whatever it is we do, then we get dollars, and then we start to feel like possessive of that. But that's what you have now to trade for things that you want or things that you need. And it is hard, and that's one thing. I mean, I like living on a farm. Like, honestly, it feels sometimes like they tell farmers, well, you should just be giving us your food. It's like, I don't see my husband most hours of the day because he's out farming, and we literally don't get paid that much, right? And everyone's mad because it's the store. But if you start peeling the layers back of what people have to do, it would be nice if everybody could make videos on YouTube and make money, but then who is going to grow the food? Who's going to process it so that it and package it so that it can, and then who's going to drive the truck to deliver it to the store? Who's going to put it on the shelves? We need everybody. Everybody matters with what they contribute. And so it's nice that, sometimes it would be nice to like work out that, oh, I can just do my spiritual work, but it's okay to do other things. It's okay to go, okay, I've got to go do this day job for this many hours, and then I get to do this thing too. Everything comes together. And sometimes I think that we forget about that when we go into the store with our money, or we have to pay the bill because we want the power or the water on. We forget all the components that make that happen from all directions.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I love that you put it that way as well, because it is about energy, but it is, there are so many layers to how it all comes together. And there is that element too, like, it's okay if you are holding a 9-to-5 job and being an entrepreneur and being an emerging writer and doing all of the things, because we are multifaceted beings and we have different interests. So we have different things that we want to do. We have different parts to play in our community as well. And, allowing ourselves to lean into different parts of that still has value in different ways. And we can allow ourselves to be seen and heard in different ways in different parts of our lives and our communities as well, depending on what our particular interests are or what our particular roles are. And you have been lucky enough to be able to combine your, like your day job working at the coffee shop with your writing, to be able to do book signing events and sell copies of your book at work. And then you also get to do things on the farm with your husband and go and, you're also a volunteer firefighter and you do other different bits and pieces. And it's okay to do all of those things. And it doesn't diminish or lessen any one of those pieces by having the other ones there. And yeah, I think it's really interesting to also look at the way then those layers of for you, since you've become an author, have actually started reintegrating as well. Like, you've had people in the fire brigade have read your books, and you've had, other people comment on your stories and the stories that you've shared in different parts of your life in different ways than perhaps you even imagined when you first thought about sharing your story.
Yeah. Yeah. Because when I first thought about sharing it, I was like, I'm going to share it in these places and hopefully these places won't notice.
Yeah.
And now I'm just like, whatever. And I did get invited to go do an author book event at, I would say, the local library, but it's still a 20-mile drive because that's how rural it is. But it's the library of the town where I went to school. My grandparents lived and all that stuff. So that's kind of fun. So that's coming up in the fall. And I was like, that's going to be so fun.
Oh, so exciting. Well, we are going to wrap it up there. If you are feeling like you are struggling with the fear of being seen and heard, we are absolutely diving into that as a theme in our Wounded Women series of books. We are definitely covering that one in Burned, but also in Broken, we're talking about breaking generational chains and ancestral cycles as well. So if not being able to be seen and heard as a woman is something that has been a generational pattern in your family that you have or you are working on breaking, we would absolutely love you to consider coming and writing with us. Amanda is also writing in Broken with us as well and sharing more of her stories in there. So if you are curious and interested, please do reach out and DM me for more information about being part of the Wounded Women series, or you can see on the screen there the website address womenwritingintentionally.com. You can also buy copies of Betrayed and read more about Amanda's story and my story on Amazon at mybook.to/betrayed book, capital B for betrayed, capital B for book. And you can also pick up copies of Lunar Wisdom on Amazon as well. So if you'd like to find out more about any of our books, you can find those on Amazon. If you'd like to find out more about writing with us and overcoming the fear of being seen and heard, please do DM me and reach out. Any amazing last words to share, Amanda, or shall we just wrap it up and kiss everybody goodbye?
Yeah, just wrap it up. Just can find me on my socials, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook, or Amanda B. Noor. And Norr. Okay.
Yes. No worries. Okay. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and we will catch you again.